Where is everybody?
What do you mean, where am I? I'm right here. I'm right here, guy. What guy? See?
Butterscotch Shenanigans. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 52 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm the web tube cleaner.
And I'm Sam, and I make art.
And today is May 31st?
Question mark?
2016?
Yeah, are there 31 days in May?
Probably. There's anywhere from 28 to 30 unless it's a leap year. So
Yeah, then there
who
could
knows?
be 32, I think is how that works.
Yeah. Also, we have a warning, which is anything can happen on this show. Probably definitely profanity and any other, potential horrors.
Violence.
So this show should not be listened to by children. So if you're a child, get out. What's in the news, guys?
Well, I think you just kind of blew right past the fact that this is episode 52.
Well, I thought about it, but because it's important because that's a whole year.
That's a year of podcasts.
It is.
But it's also the case that we've definitely missed I think 6 or 7 weeks. So I think we hit the year mark.
Yeah,
like
but
2 months ago.
nobody has to know that.
True. Well, I'll edit that part out.
Yeah, if
Well,
someone was to listen to our if someone wanted to listen to our podcast starting right now, listen to one episode a week. Well, first
They'd
of all,
be
they
behind.
would get one new one every week. but even if they didn't, if we stopped making this podcast right now, you would have an entire year of podcast to listen to.
That's pretty crazy, man.
You'd have 52 hours of podcast to listen to.
That's
Well,
a
I
lot
think
of hours.
We want to do a little celebratory thing where we cut all of the little beginning weirdness that happens before the show starts and slice them all together for the 1 year sort of look back. So everybody can remember the insane entrances to all the podcasts.
One thing I would like to do is splice those all together and then have a Flash animator make a YouTube video out of them.
That would be completely insane. Between like 3 and 7 seconds.
Amazing.
Oh,
How would we? That sounds like such an enormous pain in the ass. Would we just hire Fat Bard to do it?
I think so.
he's a
Fat
sound
Bard.
guy.
He's a sound guy. That's what he does.
He could handle it. I bet he could do it in 8 minutes.
Probably.
Easy.
The worst part will just be downloading all of the things and opening them. Because
Yeah.
it's 52 sound files.
He's got a way to do that.
He has ways.
Yeah.
Of
But otherwise,
making
we've just been nothing major has happened in the past week other than so we've wrapped up our hiring process and we'll have some more news about that probably next week in the next week's podcast. For now, we're keeping it hush hush while we let things settle. And otherwise, we've been trying to get up early.
Why? Why would we do that?
Wait, I haven't started this yet.
Yeah, Adam
forgot
missed the memo and that there wasn't one.
There wasn't a memo. Well, also, my wife is on her last night of working nights for the past 4 goddamn weeks. So my schedule has been all kinds of fucked up.
Yeah, people who are interested in getting into the medical profession
Become uninterested.
Yeah, because it's not ideal for anything.
Well, how was your getting up process this morning, Seth?
Mine was good. I discovered I've had a really hard time getting out of bed in the morning for months now, and I couldn't understand why because I used to get up pretty early, and I finally realized what it is, and it's that I switched my alarm on my clock. There's like a smart alarm feature on my phone where it does like a fade in, And I was like, maybe I should try that so that I don't get sort of like jarred awake in the morning by some kind of shrieking sound. And so it's just like this
fade in.
Yeah, so it's this nice smooth fade in, and I just could never get out of bed in the morning. And so one day I was just over this past weekend, I was like, you know what? I really want to start getting up early again because I feel like there's a lot of value in that. So
How early are you talking here?
like 6
Okay.
o'clock. And so instead of like 7:30 or
Yeah, for me,
so-
basically, if you get up at 6 o'clock or after, then it's the next day and you're fine. If you get up at even the merest moment before 6 a.m., it just
Yeah, I
doesn't
feel
count.
like
Your
I
day
feel
is
like
fucked.
pre 6 a.m. is still technically night, even though I think
Yes.
the sun comes up at 5:30. Yeah, so
Sometimes.
my strategy then was I went through my list of alarms on my phone and I found the one that was the most horrible to listen to, and it is a nightmare. I played it for Sam today, and he was like, "I want to kill myself."
It's atrocious.
Do you put
yeah.
it across the room or just?
No, I
leave
just put it
on your
right
nightstand?
next to my head, and so it's just like So there's no more fade in. It's just like immediately just this horrible piercing noise because
So the idea is you want to get jump started with a bolt of panic and
yes, you have to panic.
adrenaline.
You got to panic out of bed and be like, how do I make this noise stop? That's like, that should be your first thought of the day.
Have you also stuck is it the same program that has math? You can do like math.
Oh
games?
God.
Oh God, why would you do that to yourself?
I did
That
it for
was
a
like,
while.
I would
that's
do
not
that,
the
except I'm
best.
waking up a half hour earlier than my wife. And if I was like struggling to solve a math problem while this thing is shrieking and she's trying to sleep for an extra half an hour, that would be marriage strife material.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the biggest struggles I find with waking up in a consistent time because Jenny's schedule is so weird that she doesn't have a consistent wake up. It's usually early, but it varies tremendously in just how early it is. It can range from like 5 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. And she always gets up when she has to because she can sleep really easily. She can wake up really easily. Like none of this is a problem for her. But I need to have a religious wake up schedule for it to work. Otherwise, I feel like shit. And
Have
so
you
because
tried
of that,
the
we just
horrifying
can't do
alarm?
it. Have I tried what?
Have you tried the horrifying alarm screech?
No,
'Cause
I've
it
been
gets you out
using
of
the
bed.
fade in. The horrifying does, but the problem is I always feel worse when I wake up really fast.
Yeah. Well, alarms
I don't
don't
know.
wake you up in any sort of way that's conducive to you waking up smoothly.
That's
right?
because I think it's about when you wake up
Yeah, it
in
is.
your REM sleep
Yeah,
cycle.
so alarms just rip you right out of it, no matter where you are, which is very bad. But my favorite part about this is this morning. So I started doing this as of today, and my fiance sleeps like a rock, but then she wakes up every day at 6:30 a.m. without an alarm. That's just how she does
like
it.
a machine.
Like a machine. Doesn't matter if she went to bed at like 3:30 in the morning or 11 or 8 p.m. She'll wake up at exactly the same time. And so I set my alarm. I totally, glazed over this fact and set my alarm for 6. And it goes off at 6 and it's screaming across the room. And I forgot how loud I'd put it on. And then also the fact that it was literally on the other side of the room. So I go leaping out of bed, run over to the dresser, slap, trying to thumb this thing to get it to turn off, finally get it off. And then I go and I'm just quietly brushing my teeth. And Diana rolls over. I hear her rustling. And then she's like, "Why would you do that?" Because she got woken up.
The right question.
Yeah, she got woken up half an hour early. And she can't go back to bed once she wakes up. She's not one of those people. She's like up, she's ready to go, and it's go time.
What do you mean one of those people? I've never heard of that kind of person.
I've heard of it. Well, she's that person, I
She
guess.
is
One
that
person
one
who is
person.
capable of doing that.
Who wakes up and is like, "Well, I'm awake now.
Yeah.
That's it. The
So
deal is done."
It's going to be a bit of a rough transition for all of us, spouses included, apparently. But
Yeah, but man,
Yeah,
getting
I
up,
need a system.
that extra. The morning is a magical time
it is.
because nobody can distract you from stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially that sort of 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. window where no businesses are open, nobody's sending emails, to you from the bank or God knows where, to hassle you for whatever reason. So you could just do stuff.
Well, we even had the benefit of, it was 11:30, and I was like, wow, I'm hungry. It's about right. It's an hour earlier than usual. I'm like, oh, I'm super hungry. So Seth and I go to Chipotle down the street, and
There's nobody there.
nobody there. And then as soon as we get finished with our food at about 12,
400 people in line.
yeah, there's a line that's a mile long. I was like, wow, this is great. You're not so out of tune with everybody like I was when I did that frickin' Uberman sleep schedule thing.
Yeah, that was dumb. I think we talked about that in a prior episode.
You're not so out of sync with everybody that it's like oppressive to your general social nature or your ability to get things done, but you're out of tune enough that you get to win a little bit more. It seems like.
So we're transitioning into this 8 to 4 work window instead of 9 to 5, and that 1 hour shift is,
I don't know, man. It's good.
It's phenomenal. Yeah, because that first hour is so much more productive because you're able to beat the traffic.
But I feel like the whole thing the whole thing is more productive, right? Because you beat traffic. You're up an hour earlier than everybody else, so you have a bit more quiet time. So
you don't have to wait in line for
done.
lunch.
Yeah, you get to skip the line for lunch, and then you go home and there's no rush hour traffic.
And you go home
it's
at
nice
4, and
bright
you have an extra hour in your evening now. You got an extra hour of daylight to enjoy.
Yeah, something about it.
But I think also when you get up early, even if you feel like in my case, when I wake up early, I'd always feel like shit. Actually, when I wake up, I always feel like shit, just period. When I get up earlier, that doesn't really help that situation. But what it does do is it takes away the feeling of also being lazy, right? So like when I get up, like when I just kind of like slowly let myself get up around, 8:30 or 9, I just, I feel like crap anyway, but then I have slowly gotten out of bed. I probably laid in bed for 15 minutes.
Yeah. You've started off your day just wrong.
Lazily. Yeah. But
And
if I have to
so
get
you
up
have that
for-
momentum.
Exactly. But I have to get up for like a, 6 a.m. flight or something. Then I have to get up at like 4:30 in that case, or 5, to prepare for that. And somehow, even though it was a horrible experience, it actually makes my whole day feel like I got a lot of stuff done, and I get to feel productive the whole time.
Well, there's also that thing you get to say to yourself where you can look at your clock and you'll be like, oh my God, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning and I've been doing stuff for 6 hours already.
Yeah, it's fun to put in a whole work day before everybody else has even gone to lunch yet.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. Then you feel like, you know what? I could probably call it a day now because I've put in a shitload of quality time, right? Quality productive time, and now I could just relax for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, because
we don't have much.
Evenings are for just wasting time because nobody wants to do anything in the evening.
Your brain's not functional. Come on.
Yep. Nothing. I think 2 p.m. is basically the cutoff where things start to deteriorate for people mentally.
Because you've had lunch, your first dose of caffeine is wearing off, so you have to boost it back up, but your brain has kind of gone into a decrepit, shriveled state from
It's like a
falling off
raisin.
the first round. Yeah.
It's a brainsin. Anyway, let's get to the questions.
Yeah, we got a ton of questions, and we don't really have a lot of news. That's about all the news.
The
we got
news
this
is
week.
we're waking up early.
Great news.
That is
And
fabulous.
we're going to step right into the questions. Got a bunch of them, and they're very, very good this week. So we're going to try to tackle as many as we can. And with that, I think the first one that I want to dive into is actually a general question from Alan Falcon, who asks, do men or women have more brothers?
Okay, before we get into this, so Adam and I did some figuring to figure this out before.
I did not do any figuring.
So I want to hear, Sam, I want to hear what you think.
Okay, so let's take the average household, right? 2 kids situation, assuming
Sure.
there's a slightly higher probability of males being born, which I think there is, like 53%.
It's actually the other way around, but sure.
It's women?
Yeah, it's 51% women. At least the last number I saw. But here's the thing. Who gives a fuck? Let's just ignore it and call it 50-50.
All right, 50-50, sure.
Because
So,
to me, it's about sort of the spirit of the question, the probability question, more than it is about the, tiny specifics of what the probability is actually.
So
So
if
do
we're
men or
assuming,
women
like,
have more brothers?
a normal family is 2 kids, right, on average. And there's a thing here, which is that if it's a 50-50 shot, right? So we're gonna assume then that on average there's 1 boy and 1 girl. If you're the woman, you have a brother. If you're the brother, you don't have a brother, right? Because you are the brother.
Right.
So you sort of consume the statistic because you're the man.
You ate the brotherness.
You ate the brotherness.
You ate
So
the
my guess would be that women have more brothers because men essentially don't count one
That was
person.
also my guess. Okay, listen to this.
But you're wrong.
Let's say, all right,
What?
okay, so let's say there are 2 children in a typical household,
Okay.
or in an average household. So we're assuming this is representative of the whole population.
Well, actually, we should take a step back and say if there are 0 children, it doesn't matter. If there is 1 child, it also doesn't matter because your chance of being
Right, you have to
a
have
boy
2,
or a girl as 1 child is 50-50, and you can't have a brother in either case.
Right. So this only applies to households of
2 plus.
2 or more children. So we'll start at the case of 2. All right. So there are 4 potential combinations of children here. Right? Either you have a boy then a girl, a boy then a boy, a girl then a boy, or a girl then a girl. Right?
Right.
Okay. So in the girl situation, 0 boys have brothers, 0 girls have brothers. Right? In the 2 scenarios where either you have a girl then a boy or a boy then a girl, it's equal.
Right.
Right?
1 brother each.
Yeah. Well, no.
Or I guess 0,
each
right.
girl in those
Each girl gets a
situations
brother.
has 1 brother, and the boys have 0 brothers.
Correct.
And so that's 2. So that's 2 of the 4 scenarios where a girl has a brother. And the other situation is 2 brothers. Each brother has 1 brother.
Right.
So that's also 2.
Right.
So it's even.
Yep.
So you're saying it's just even?
Yeah.
It's
It's an
the
equal
probability is the
probability. Yeah. Because if you assume 50%, so there's a 50% chance of each, right? 50% of households will have a girl and a boy because of the way that either the girl first and then the boy, or the boy first then the girl. So that's half of households, and in those cases, the girl has a brother, and in the 25% case, both boys have one brother. So
This reminds me of Adam. Adam and I were talking in a coffee shop when he was here about the benefits of using a coin to make a tricky probability decision. Do you remember this, Adam?
The benefits of using a coin? I don't remember that part of the discussion.
Well, yeah. So we're talking about how if you have something like the Monty Hall problem, right, where you got 33% chance upon opening any given door, blah blah blah. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I know that part.
Yeah. So the question was, if it's the case that you're confronted with a situation in which you have two options, but there's an imbalance in like a 60% chance for one, say, and a 40% chance for the one that you want, is it the case that you're better off flipping a coin in order to decide?
I think it depends on if you're going theoretical, if you're going simulation, maybe. But here's another question. What happens if there's 3 children? So we figured this one out too. It's the same. Still even.
But it's interesting though, because I'm pretty sure I heard some, and it may have been a different formulation of this question, but I remember hearing some question that was like this, where your intuition would say one thing, but it was totally different. But I don't think it was this case of like them being equal cases. And so I couldn't think of what the formulation of that question would be that would do it. But
I'd say probably in a more realistic sense, considering 51% of children are women, and women also have a longer life expectancy than men do. Then
wait, so you mean have living brothers?
Yes. I assume if
are alive and have
have more living brothers.
Yeah, I mean, if you get into like the details of people's lives and that kind of stuff, and I think also there's probably a different probability if somebody has a boy first versus a girl first, of if they also then have another kid, and there's probably all these other kinds of things involved because of social nonsense that happens that may skew this.
But that's just a bunch of shenanigans.
That's just a bunch of nonsense.
Who cares?
All right, move on to the next question. It's from Griffin at 962, who asks, what are your opinions on how Google handles publishing on the Play Store versus how Apple handles it on the App Store?
Ooh, this is going to get controversial.
We love how both of them do it. Please keep featuring us.
Yeah, but here's an interesting question. So in both, basically, I think it's a question of, they're both very open, right? Pretty much anybody can publish stuff on Google Play. Anybody can publish stuff on
price of entry is very low on both.
Yep.
And it's not per game, it's per year.
Per year. Yep. The price is a little bit lower on Google Play. But there's an interesting kind of a difference in approach to sort of malicious content. On iTunes, on the App Store, the content goes through a screening process before it goes on. And on Google Play, things just get reported after the fact. So that makes it so that it's much more immediate and much easier to put something up on Google Play because nobody's going to check it, right? And on the App Store, there's a waiting period where your stuff has to get screened. So I think, and it weirdly kind of works out okay in both cases. There's definitely more crappy stuff on like the new section of the Google Play. But when you actually look in just like the main section of Google Play, it's fine, right? Like all the bad stuff gets reported and removed eventually. So
yeah, I think there's kind of a misconception that the App Store has better apps because of that filtering process. But the important thing to know is that they're actually not filtering for quality of the app. They're only trying to screen out things that
porn
are
and
rule
viruses.
breakers.
Yeah, that break their rules, and that's it. I mean, there's plenty of garbage on both.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think the question I have is, if you were to try to also set a bar for quality, how would you go about it?
Yeah, I have no idea.
So even Steam, they have the green light process, and people are getting more and more sort of, I don't know if I'd say agitated or whatever, but Steam users are getting more and more kind of bummed out about
more like I think apathetic actually.
Yeah, just about the overall quality of stuff that is creeping through the green light process. So having that kind of voting system seems to not necessarily even work.
Well, it'd be really interesting.
It works a hell of a lot better than having nothing.
It works better than nothing, but it doesn't necessarily
Not just better,
work well.
Way better. I mean, even because it's true that Steam users are getting annoyed because stuff is like the quality bar is kind of slowly going down. But if you still look at that quality bar, like the worst games on Steam and the number of those bad games versus the stuff that's on mobile, I mean, it's not even comparable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very different stuff. But I think maybe an interesting model would be something like using basically Google's approach to that policy violation rule, which is like, we'll let it publish and then wait for people to report it, essentially. If it was the case that after, say, 100 plus reviews or something like that of your app on one of the app stores, if it didn't achieve above a certain rating, that they would nuke your game from orbit.
Yeah, the problem there, though, is that people don't use
now the players
to talk about
that actually gives the players more of a hammer to wield against developers.
Yeah, players already have actually too much power in that context. Because
I didn't say it was a good idea.
It is an idea.
It was an idea.
Yeah. Well, this explains. I mean, a lot of this kind of it exposes how difficult it is to bring quality content. And I remember when the greenlight process first appeared, Valve had a rule that you had to pay $100 to put your game onto greenlight. And at the time, there was a huge backlash from players who were declaring that this was anti-indie developer because huge studios who wanted to use greenlight, $100 is no problem, but you've got, Joe Schmo over here made his one game by himself, and he doesn't have $100 to put his game up on greenlight. So this is anti-developer, and then
it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where somebody can make a full game of quality and also isn't be able
capable
to somehow save $100 over a long period of time, because it takes to make a good game. At minimum, you're talking a handful of months.
Right.
More likely, you're talking about some number of years. And
if you can't set aside 18 cents a day or something.
Yeah, exactly. To me, I find that a really just flat out wrong kind of argument, because I think when we've talked about this internally a bit in the past for all the stores, the barrier, it is really nice on the one hand that the barrier is low. It's actually great, because that's the reason that people can get their foot in the door. The main problem with that is that what you end up getting a lot of in that case, because the barrier is so low, is on mobile you see a lot of these sort of like clones of games that there are companies who just produce basically every week a clone of an existing top chart game. Right. And that's their thing. They're just polluting the shit out of the stores with these garbage knockoffs of existing games. And
I don't know if it's even
companies that do this.
Not even like a company thing, but individuals making clones of successful games.
Yeah, individuals do it too. There are companies that do it. There are individuals that do it. But what I'm talking about is on the scale of, and then there are students and hobbyists and people who are kind of learning and getting into the scene that put their prototypes basically up in the stores.
Right. With no intention to make a commercial product. They're just like,
I
made a game and I put it up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with making things that are just freely available. The thing is, if your business model allows you to do that, and then you put your stuff in a place where there are actually businesses competing with each other, then basically what you're doing is diluting the market in a way that's actually bad for everybody else. So
should they have like a commercial sale checkbox or something? Versus
the thing is, because most people don't do it, and you would be hard pressed to find a game of quality, or I guess games of quality, with any number of them that are 100% absolutely free,
right,
in every way, shape, and form. Because who the hell would do that? It doesn't make any sense. So I personally think that there should be a threshold to get in, which is and not even super realistic, but some sort of intention of having your thing be a commercial product, because that changes the attitude of developers coming in, and it filters out the stuff that was never intended to be sold, that just kind of fills up the space and makes it harder for everybody who is trying to sell something to get people to be aware of their stuff, because they're competing in this background of infinite free, just okay or bad stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I've always kind of been of the opinion that some financial hurdle should be there on a per game basis of like $20 or something, which isn't an astronomical amount of money, but it's enough, because I know that like 50% of games that go up on or at least this was the case a couple of years ago, the last I heard about it. But over half of games that go up don't get downloads. They don't make nothing happens with them, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea here is you want, like, as a player, you want a better selection of quality games, right? And as a developer, you want less competition. So by having some kind of a hurdle for people to jump over, that's basically them putting their money where their mouth is as a developer and saying, I believe that this thing has the capacity to make at least $20 so that I can so that I can recoup my investment of putting it up on the store, right?
Yeah, and most games still won't recoup that, but because then if you're the kind of person who just wants to make your game available for free and that's it, then you've already contributed hundreds of hours of your time. Right. What's $20 on top of that?
Right.
In terms of your investment in the thing. And for indie devs or solo devs or, teenagers who are making a cool app for their first time and want to put it on the store, that cost isn't actually prohibitive. And then it prevents all these things like the spam apps that certain companies and individuals put out as well.
Right. Yeah. I remember when we first put up Quadrupus Rampage, we were competing with Touch Girl, Touch Boob, and Boob Smasher.
Yeah.
And
they sandwiched between those two.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, they got pulled down, but it took a week for them to get pulled down, which was about the amount of time that we were on the charts alongside those things, right? And so if somebody went looking down the charts trying to find an interesting, action RPG or something, they're also scrolling past Touch Girl, Touch Boob.
And we should also
Girl Toucher, Boob Toucher.
We should also explain what Touch Girl, Touch Boob was. It was an app where you're looking at cartoon cleavage, if I recall correctly.
3D. There were 3D breasts.
3D even.
Yeah. No, this was Boob Smasher you're thinking of.
Yeah, so in Boob Smasher, so then the character smashes its boobs together. And your goal is to like tap in between them without getting your finger crushed.
But an ad will appear.
An ad will randomly appear sometimes, so that when you go to not get your finger crushed, you accidentally click on an ad and therefore make money for the developer.
It's pretty.
So that's the kind of shit,
gross all around,
Yeah, gross in every way it could be, and that's the kind of shit you have to compete with because of the fact that there is no. Because without a doubt, that game probably made tens of thousands of dollars.
Probably.
So having a $20 barrier to entry would not have stopped it.
Would not have stopped that
way
game.
Fewer that game specifically. But there are many games like that, and most of them fail completely. And so the risk of putting something out there like that, because it wasn't likely that they would have made $20 off of it. For some reason, people were just really into that concept at the time we launched Quadrupus Rampage. So that you're going to see just a lot less of that stuff, because then the financial risk isn't worth it, even though it's actually a very, very low financial risk.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting because just to kind of wrap that up, though, I mean, I think Steam was onto something with their $100 to put your game up on Greenlight, and everybody had the gut reaction to it, and now we're kind of seeing the consequences of not having any kind of seriousness barrier, right? Yeah, it's something I'd like to see more of.
Yeah, and this is probably another good, lesson that often you should just absolutely not pay attention to what the loud people
general public
say.
The loud public says.
Yeah, because their gut reaction is to be angry about stuff. Anytime you do something that can be perceived as somehow being too commercial or a privacy violation or all kinds of any number of things, even if they actually make the most sense for what you're trying to do and are actually the best thing for the community as a whole, once people actually understand fully what it's doing and why it's designed that way. So often devs try to backtrack and undo stuff that they're trying to do with game design or with business plans or whatever because of a bunch of loud people who are angry about it, and as a consequence, everybody
pays for it.
Everybody pays for it in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you got to really understand why you're doing things, and if someone criticizes it, that's fair, and you should probably listen, but try to understand exactly if their criticism is valid or if it's just their normal gut reaction to a thing they don't actually understand.
Right.
All right, next question comes from Frog_Ninja, who asks Superman, why is he so difficult to make a game out of?
Superman fucking sucks because he's infinitely overpowered.
Superman is a balance. He's a walking balance problem.
He's a walking balance problem.
X-Men on Saturday. Seth and I went and saw it.
Yep.
And first of all, very good, actually. I loved the crap out of it. But I think there's a really fun feel to the X-Men movies because nearly everybody has like a ability, right?
Yeah.
It's not like Superman where you're invincible, plus you shoot lasers out of your face, plus you can move super fast, plus you're super strong, etc. Everybody has like one of those things. And as a result, what that means is that any given problem usually has a creative and unique solution that involves a lot of people.
It's a class-based system.
Yeah, it's a class-based system. And so, in one part they have Nightcrawler
exactly.
in there, and Nightcrawler is jumping people like in and out of an airplane while like shit is going crazy. And at the very end, he has to like, is he going to be able to jump everybody at once? I don't know. That's one of those big sort of moments for him. But his only ability is to jump people. Like it's that teleportation thing.
Also, he's blue.
He's blue. But I think the problem with Superman is exactly actually what you start seeing in the recent Avengers movie and the Captain America movie that just came out too, which is that they've made it to a point where there's so much power available for these characters to take advantage of that there's no way to present them with a really interesting challenge such that it's enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
Or in the case of Superman, that it's enjoyable to play because like Adam was saying, how do you balance Superman? You don't. You need to nerf Superman before you can enjoy it.
It's the same as the Flash, which I've also complained about
Yeah.
for the prior episode, right? It's when you make these completely overpowered characters, the only thing you can do to add something that feels like a conflict, because if you're just overpowered, it's the same as cheating, right? Nothing's actually a conflict or a difficulty. You just go crush a thing.
And interesting stories come from adversity.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that means that the adversity you have to introduce is garbage adversity. It's not like fun problem solving.
It's usually
like
false.
Yeah, it's like here's the only skill you have access to. Now go solve this puzzle using that skill, like what X-Men uses, right? It's instead you can literally solve any problem at any time. So
As long as you
just
can
have
punch
to
it to
remove
death.
that capability from you arbitrarily by making you sad right now or something, right?
Right.
Or whoops, there was some kryptonite. Now you're a normal person.
Yeah, yeah.
With
you
normal
have
person
to,
problems.
You have to generate some just stupid mechanism by which to basically take away the cheat codes that you've permanently given somebody. Yeah. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, Superman is a balance problem in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you watch shows like Arrow or Daredevil, or even Jessica Jones, actually, it's cool because these are heroes who either they have some kind of special ability, or they don't even have that. They're just like really good with an arrow or with a bow or something like that. But otherwise, they're just kind of regular people. And so they're trying to deal with the stuff that a superhero deals with, but they're also very vulnerable all the time. And that actually creates really interesting stories.
Oh, yeah.
Not somebody who can get, thrown 400 miles and smash through every office building in New York City and then get up and be like, dang it. Like, that's not, you don't have problems if that's you.
Nope.
All right, next question comes from Kevin888, and he asks, do you have to play a lot of games in order to make good games? And as a broader question, is general knowledge of classics and awareness of the modern necessary? What do you guys think?
I think we should include his parenthetical at the end of that.
Yeah, he's very proud of him. So he said, that was a well-phrased question. I am proud of that sentence.
We're proud of you too, Kevin.
I would say actually no.
I agree.
I think you don't need to play a lot of games to make good games. I think you need to make a lot of games to make good games. Like
Agreed.
you need to play enough games to sort of understand what players might expect in terms of the way things are talked about and the way things are presented to them. Because if you reinvent everything from the ground up in a really, really unfamiliar way that people can't figure out how to interface with, you have a problem. So it's good to get a sense of just the general kinds of systems and interface and presentation that people know.
Yeah, there are lots of conventions that will make your life a hell of a lot easier if you use because players will already know what you're going for.
Yeah, but once you have that, you should just make games because there's a lot more to learn by making games than there is by playing them. Yeah. For sure.
Well, I think, but we routinely take time to go and like play a new thing to see how they handle various systems or stuff like that to either get inspiration or even just what you might call like a competitive advantage to see where games like the ones that we want to build have basically fallen short or what the general complaints are about them, and then to figure out ways to mitigate those to make them just a better title overall. So there's I think once you start making good games, then you can make even better games by playing other games.
Yeah, right. I think that's exactly it. Is just playing games is not sufficient because you need to be playing it while paying attention to all the different aspects of the game design that makes the game enjoyable or not enjoyable.
Yeah.
And to really be able to do that effectively, you have to also be making games because that's when that forces you to be really aware of all the problems. I mean, when it comes to things like how does the camera move as the player does? That's the kind of thing you don't even think of that as a normal person unless you have to go program a camera to do something. And you're like, holy shit, this is not as straightforward as I thought it would be. And then all of a sudden you go look at what everybody else does and you can learn from the models that they've chosen.
Yeah, I played this game called Path of Exile, which is a free-to-play game on Steam. And it's basically Diablo. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's Diablo. But they do one thing that I can't sit there. I were looking at it yesterday and examining to figure out what the problem is, but there's something with the way either the camera moves or the player moves.
I think it's a combination of the two.
Maybe both, where it feels very clunky. And I think the camera basically stops immediately once the player stops moving. There's no sort of, there's no tween action to it. And so it's a very jarring, anytime you move between camps or whatever else or between enemies, there's a sort of, there's a bit of a click visually. And then on top of that, the player, instead of just instantly, say, popping around the other direction, like a video game character would, it does a more realistic, the character actually takes some time to kind of like turn around.
Well, actually, no. So this is also what makes it jarring, is if you watch it closely, you'll notice that the character in its animation takes time to turn around, but physically the character is already instantly moving the other direction. So you'll just like start moving that direction at full speed, but your character does this weird, like, rotatey.
So that's how they compensate to make it feel like, yeah, because that's one of the problems is animations actually
take time.
They take time, and so if you want to have an animated attack sequence or something, then that attack has to actually use up time. If it can't be instantaneous, that makes it feel unsnappy, especially if you have like a fast platform or something. So you have to always have to find some way to sort of cheat and make it feel like it's animated but have it not really, or you have to slow down the action. And it sounds like what they did here is they did a sort of a graphical cheat where the action is instantaneous,
but the character turns around.
But they
slowly.
wanted an animation, so they turned the character slowly, and so then
it turns out being very disorienting.
Yeah.
So
so it's this kind of stuff that you'll identify as you start making games, as like suddenly you'll be aware of all these things you just didn't even realize were things to pay attention to. And then at that point, I would say, once you hit that point where you're now aware of the kinds of things you need to think about, now all of a sudden playing games is probably essential. Mm-hmm. Because now you can see all the different ways that people have solved the same kinds of problems that you're facing.
Yeah, it's a difference from, like if you played football in high school or something, and everybody gets together and watches the game footage afterwards, and the coach is going through with the team and like pointing out all the different plays and who could have done what differently and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's very different than just getting together with your buddies and watching the Super Bowl, right? Because, like, you are breaking every aspect of what you're watching down piece by piece and try to figure out how could that have been different. And it's the same thing with playing games versus as a player with no development experience versus being a developer and a designer and then going and playing it with the purpose of breaking the game down into little tiny pieces and figuring out how they work.
All right, this next question comes from Mitrone, who asks, any fun swimming anecdotes? Did you guys swim in a club, and what was your best stroke and time?
My best time was not very good. I don't know what the times were, and only swimmers would give a shit anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I was very slow constantly.
Yeah, but you also got slower over time, depending on how long you were in the water.
That is true. I think that's true for everybody. Probably.
Yeah. I don't know about fun swimming anecdotes. So we swam. We grew up in a small town in Iowa, and our high school did not have a swimming pool. And we went over to the college in our town, and our whole swim team was able to basically set up a deal with the college where we got to use 3 lanes of this pool during
1 hour.
During 1 hour of public swim time. So they would allocate those 3 lanes to us. And in order to minimize the impact that would have on people who wanted to use the pool, we had to swim at the worst possible time for the public, which was 6 to 7 in the morning. And it was in the winter. So And we
so we had to
lived,
de-ice our cars.
yeah,
and
we
then
lived
drive
5
from out in the
miles.
country.
Yeah, we lived 5 miles out of town in the country. So we'd be
On
up
an
at
unplowed road.
Yep, we'd be up at 5:15. We would de-ice the car and start thawing things out and eat maybe a bowl of Cheerios or something, and then hop in and drive in the freezing -20-degree weather because it gets really fucking cold up there.
Oh yeah.
And then we'd all jump in a freezing cold pool and swim for an hour, and it was a nightmare. It was just a living nightmare.
The best part is when you would get out of practice, you get showered, and then you walk outside, and it was cold enough that your hair would freeze
Just instantly.
So you get to your car, and your hair would be like frozen straight up because you just sort of toweled off and walk outside, and you could hear it sort of crack on the top of the car as you. Yeah, it was nuts.
It was a kind of a camaraderie thing though, because if you were walking down the hallway at school then and you saw another swimmer
with their hair all fucked up,
Yeah,
and
like,
their skin all dry,
their eyes are like, they have goggle marks around their eyes and like they look just fucking tired, and like everybody else is just getting to school, right? It's like 8 o'clock in the morning.
It's like the early
everybody
morning
else
stuff we talked about earlier.
Yeah, everybody else's day is just starting, and like you see another swimmer and you make eye contact and you're like,
We've seen
no,
some shit.
We've seen some shit has gone down today.
I think my favorite, well, two of my favorite ones from swimming, anecdote wise, were Seth and I got in the truck to drive to swimming, and I think it was like a month and a half in of the 3-month season, and Seth grabbed the steering wheel, and his hand was so dry from the winter and from the chlorine from the pool that his fucking hand split open as he grabbed the steering wheel.
Yeah, the dry skin. That's another great.
That was
like your knuckle
insane.
split or something?
Yeah, the knuckle split open.
Yeah, just. But
Sort
then
of shit
again,
butter,
I mean, it's sort of it's the body's way of re-moisturizing itself
by bleeding.
by bleeding all over. It gets yeah.
Yeah, man.
Had you never heard of body lotion? You maniac.
Dude, come on. I mean, when you're dipping yourself in chlorine for an hour a day,
Yeah, there's only so much you can do.
there's only so much lube in the universe.
Yeah,
and
the other
it's
one
not
is that
enough.
around the holidays, because our coach was a sadist of sorts, we would do this thing where he'd be like, everybody in the deep end, and then we'd all be like, oh shit.
kill
We go-
ball?
Well, kill ball was great. That was the fun part. But the other part was we would go and circle up in the deep end, treading water. And then coach would grab a folding chair from the believers, a metal folding chair, and hand it to someone. And you had to hold it above your head until he said that you could give it to someone else.
So you could only use your feet.
Yeah, you're treading water with a goddamn 10-pound metal folding chair.
And it's harder than normal to stay up because the deep end was not a very big area, and having that many people all treading water in the same spot makes the water very turbulent, and you can't get the normal sort of leverage that you can off of your kicks.
Nightmare.
Yeah, it was great. Swimming was fun.
For some reason, it was fantastic. I don't know why. All right, next question again comes from Griffin962, who says, last episode you mentioned playing Rocket League with each other and Carol. Do you plan to ever invite the community to play games with you or stream games you play with each other?
Ooh.
We've talked about doing both of those things. I guess the second one's easier to answer, the streaming question. We tried a couple times. We just did some streaming just to see what it was like. And basically what we found was, given our remote working situation and the shittiness of various internet connections, it was just technologically infeasible or has been. So we're going to revisit this once we all end up in St. Louis and start working out of the same space and all that good stuff. So that's a possibility.
Yeah. I think with
the
regards
other
to playing
one,
community stuff, it's just kind of a question of how many slots you have. So
yeah, because there are many more community members than there are slots in any game in the universe.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd be super down to play Rocket League with people. Seth is so good that he will just crush your soul out of your toes when you play. So you got to be aware that it's not going to be the best time from a winning standpoint, but we do have a very good time.
Well, we should say on Steam we do have a Coffee with Butterscotch, or no, Butterscotch Shenanigans
Steam community.
group. Yeah. So you can join that thing, and then you'll be able to find other community members and stuff, and we're in there too, so you can find us that way. So that's kind of the access point to finding us on Steam. But yeah, the really the tricky part here is how do you set that up? in a way that actually works out because of the extreme slot limitation.
Well, I think there's a whole nother aspect to it, in my opinion, too, which is just that, like, what about the times when maybe I don't want to play games with anyone?
Yeah, so this is
and I wanna be on
actually
Steam.
this is actually my concern about this kind of stuff is even though we love the shit out of our players, it's also the case that they are our customers and they have paid us for a product that they can engage with at any time, right? And so it's possible that players will want to then suddenly send us messages through Steam to ask for features or to report a bug or, whatever. And usually if we're on Steam playing a game, it's not because like in a weird way, by somebody sending us a message through that medium, they are making us go to work.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Not even in a weird way. That's just exactly what's happening.
like if your job is, you go to the office 9 to 5, whatever, it would be as if we came to your house, put you in a car and drove you to the office and we're like, let's get to business.
Well, no, even worse. It would be as if you were in the middle of playing video games and we interrupted you.
And we just jumped in.
Said,
We're like,
hey, that thing that you are not supposed to be doing right now because you're not
How about
at work
that
anymore?
TPS report?
Yeah, go do that thing.
yeah. Yeah, so it actually does do it's a weird way to kind of blur the lines. And that's why we try to do stuff like the podcast. We do dev chats every now and then. So we try to set up different, kind of media that we can use to talk to our players, but not in such a way that it just creates like a permanently open channel of communication with us that is just available all the time because, we are human beings and we do want to sort of have
Alone time.
we want to have personal lives that exist apart from our work. So
Yeah, actually, probably the idea here then is that we would have to already feel like we knew our players and some of their context, probably from our Discord channel, for example, and already knew that they were just people who saw us as just people and wanted to
respect
hang out
our
and play video
time
games. Yeah.
yeah.
I know I've definitely had several cases where people have friended me on Steam and then I accepted it, and the very first thing that happened was they started asking me a load of questions about Crashlands. But my strategy has been very simple, which is just to unambiguously say, "Hey, this is I'm not at work. This is a work.
This
thing,
is me
so
relaxing.
this is me relaxing. So if you want to ask this kind of questions, just go to our forums."
Yeah, and it's crazy too because it's a very asymmetrical thing, right? Because their perspective of Crashlands is that it's a fun relaxation activity. So even them talking about it, it still kind of falls in that purview.
Yeah,
but for
it's still
us,
part of their
for
hobby.
us, it's part of our job, right? So it's a very different kind of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is all to say, if you want to hang out with us as human beings, you should
to know us
join,
first.
Super down.
Join the Discord.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Just on Discord. All right, next question comes from Hawks Rock 250. He asks, or she, not sure what flavor of hawk it is. Of you three brothers, who would take what job? Okay, here we go. President of the United States, game show host, or YouTube prankster?
Oh man,
None of us would take YouTube prankster.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I hate pranks. I feel
It's
terrible.
just a prank, bro. It's just a prank.
I feel terrible if I think maybe once in my life I pranked somebody a long time ago
What did
as
you
a
do?
young child. I've kind of blocked it from memory because it wasn't even a big thing, but I felt so bad about it. And I was just like,
the thing
never
is,
again,
No,
never again.
Pranking is just being an asshole. There's
Yeah.
no.
Well, it depends.
There's no way around
That's what
it
it's
never
become.
depends. It's
No,
always
no,
just
I think it
being an
does depend,
asshole.
because I think one of my favorite ones that I've seen on the YouTubes was this instant first date thing, where there's just a guy sitting there, and then I can't remember exactly how it happens. But basically, he's just sitting there in like normal clothes or something, and he's just got a normal table. And then if someone chooses to sit down with him, either male or female, then like a bunch of waiters come out and they like dress the table really quick and put down some food and light a candle or something. And it's just this hilarious sort of, it's an adorable moment. And people are like, oh, this is fun. And
So it's a question of sort of like pulling a prank on a
guess
person versus, I don't know what you would call this.
Well, it's like laughing at versus with someone.
Yeah.
that's the difference. And I think usually the problem is that the definition of a prank tends to be that you just do something that puts someone in a very uncomfortable
Yeah,
situation.
to most people, it means be an asshole to somebody else. But here's the thing: though. if that person who you did the surprise date to was a super introvert or had just gotten out of a really shitty relationship or whatever, right? Then that would have caused them to have a horrible experience, and then again would have been you being an asshole. So pranks only work if they're completely
They're risky.
harmless. But then at that point, it's just
It's just doing a
What
thing.
What about that Velociraptor one where the guy, they have that like full body Velociraptor thing, that suit that you can wear, and it basically transforms you into what looks like a
fully
an actual freaking Velociraptor. And I think they had it. I think it was in a Japanese game show or something, of course. But there's a guy walking around an office with it. And so he like would round a corner and everybody would be like, oh my God, and just take off running, which is hilarious, but also, same thing, right?
It's also kind of a dick move, right? Because it's the thing, like when you're looking at it from the outside as a rational person, you're like, oh, well, that's completely harmless because, everybody knows dinosaurs aren't real, etc.
But if you saw one.
Yeah, but if you saw a fucking Velociraptor around the
that
corner.
Looked too lifelike.
Yeah, you would fear for your life for a moment. Even though actually, and I think we should also always remember that there are many, many people who know a hell of a lot less about the world than you expect.
Right.
It's true.
True. Yeah. You know what's funny? Making somebody think that they're about to be eviscerated and then consumed by an
that's
animal.
Actually what you're doing. So again, you're just being an asshole.
All right. What about game show host?
Well, I definitely don't want to be president. I used to want to be president. Then
Why do you not want to be president anymore?
Because then you got to deal with Congress every fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would be the worst.
So basically, if you're a prankster, you are an asshole. If you're the president of the United States, you're just dealing with an infinite number of assholes.
We're like 500 assholes. So I mean, I feel like just by sort of process of elimination, I'd have to go with the game show host.
Yeah, well, I think that's the only viable career path.
Of these three, yeah,
that's a pretty rough deal. Although if it was a fun game show, I don't know.
Yeah, then you can actually.
I'm not really too familiar with TV, but
because maybe some people can win money on your show, maybe they can win some fame. And if it's one where you're not also being an asshole to people, then you're bringing some good spirit to the people who watch.
Yeah.
All around win.
All right, next question comes from Aid Pro, who asks, do you guys prefer mobile, PC, or console games?
I think
PC.
The key here, though, is they ended it with the word games.
Plural. What do you mean?
No, as in...
It would be grammatically incorrect.
No. As in, do we care about games? Which games do we prefer? And we like I talked about in the past, games aren't platform dependent. And they shouldn't be. And they should stop being that.
I don't know. Well, I mean, but they are right now. So it's a valid question, right?
Not all of them. I mean, but because to me, it's a kind of a nonsensical question, right? Because it's like saying, knowing the library of games on each of these platforms with that, of course, all have different amounts of overlap between them. Which of those collections do you prefer? I don't think that makes any sense.
Well,
I think it's a totally valid question.
Yeah, to me, which one do you prefer to play on? I think is an absolutely valid question.
I prefer PC. But I mean, I think it's actually even from the perspective of games, like there are definitely some games that are generally only found on different platforms, right? So like Candy Crush is there everywhere on mobile.
Hey, Candy Crush came pre-installed on my Windows 10 laptop.
Oh, that's true. Oh. That's true. Mine too. I uninstalled it, just for the record. But but there are some games that have a really hard time existing on other platforms, and so I'm a fan of EVE Online, which would be super hard to play on an iPad, or on a console.
That's like specific games because what you're really saying is there are certain kinds of games, or there are certain games you tend to really prefer. Yeah. And those games can only live on certain subsets of platforms. But there are games that I also like on mobile. All of my favorite games are on PC, but that's also because I grew up with PC and have a long history with it.
It's an older platform.
I must admit, I haven't actually gotten to sit down and play on a console in a long time.
Well, to me, a console is just a subset of PC.
Well, no, because the play experience is actually very different. Because it's usually a couch TV with a control in your hand. And went over to a friend's house and got to sit down on the couch with the controller in my hand and play video games with a big TV. And it's a very different experience. Like, I actually love it. It's way more, I would say games that have any sort of immersive intent to them, in my opinion, they can get a lot more out of it on console. It seems like to me, because for some reason, the whole like lounging on a couch with a particular device in your hand that you don't get to use for anything else.
Well, yeah, I think that's the key, right? Because you're playing that game.
And that's not the console that does it. It's like that's kind of the habit that has grown around console, but that's how I play games at home. Only I stream it from my PC
most
to
people,
my TV.
Yeah. But I mean, as far as the general experience between those three different platforms, that's what the difference is, right?
Yeah.
PC is you're sitting at your desk with the mouse keyboard. Console is on a couch with the TV.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have kind of talked in the past about the idea that if you work from home, for example, and you play games on the very computer that you work on, then there is a potential for sort of the potential to make it more difficult for you to relax because you're still physically in your place of work and you're using the same tool. And you could technically alt tab out of that game and fire up whatever you need to fire up to get more work done, right? So I think there's something about sort of physically going to a different space and sitting down in front of the TV with like a PlayStation or an Xbox or something, where you're making a very active decision there where you're just like, this is what I'm doing right now. And there's nothing else that I can really do.
There's something nice about that.
Yeah, it's good.
And really what we should do is just go back to those things we bought when we were kids, those like single game devices, where it's like
the race car one, remember?
Yeah, there was that one in the Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
Where
you
it's
would
like
just
it's
jump over
pre-built.
things.
Everything about it is predefined, so you can actually see the faint outline of all the stuff that's going to light up.
Yeah.
Because then, you absolutely can't do anything else besides play that game on that device.
Yep,
you're committed. Yeah.
All right, so we got time for one last question, and we're gonna aim on a end on a Crash Lands one, which comes from the Lime Wizard, which is
I like it.
A phenomenal name. Be great at a margarita party.
A Lime Wizard.
Who asks, what is your favorite Crash Lands creature, sentient race, or main character?
Ooh. What do you guys think?
I think my favorite race of the three available, well, I guess, unless you count Grubby too, but we haven't really dug into him too much yet. So, of the three available, I would actually pick probably the Polari.
The 4 available, because the Quadrupy are also.
Oh yeah, the Quadrupy are in there too.
Featured strongly.
Yeah, I like the Polari quite a bit. I think they have a lot of meat to their overall cultural stuff that we didn't get to develop quite as much with some of the other races, mainly the Tendrom. So they have a little more dimension to them than the other races, which I like a lot.
For me, it's the Quadrupy the Quadrupy as a race / species. Main character probably to Choo Choo.
He's
just such a goofball.
Slippery.
Well, and you can never quite tell the way it's written. It's a little hard to tell exactly if he's actually being mischievous all the time, or there's a little bit of uncertainty there, which I think is kind of a fun.
Well, the Brubus, they're very morally ambiguous. Like they have a different code that they live by, which is they just want to move up in rank.
Yeah, and then it's built on favors.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of favor swapping.
Yeah, and so they'll totally screw each other over or sabotage things or whatever, because it's not about right versus wrong or good and evil or whatever. It's about moving up in rank.
Yeah,
that's their whole thing.
It's exactly like politicians in real life.
Yes. Which is what we based the Brubus on.
Yep.
So
and then for favorite creature, I'd have to say
Snorble.
Snorbles are pretty good. Snorbles are fun because they feel so like
they're nuts.
But they feel so unnatural because they kind of have this balloon feel to them.
They float
in the context
around.
Of
they have
the
lower gravity than everything else.
everything about it was just super weird. I think the Shirk. I'd have to say Shirks.
The great Shirk.
The Shirks. Yeah, I'd say I lean toward the Glidopus as my favorite creature. Hovering electric Cephalopod is awesome. I kind of wish that we had explored their sort of electrical nature a little bit more. But there's potential for that in the future.
There's tons of games to go.
Yeah. I definitely like the Brubus the most as a race because they just fucking crack me up. Just all of they talk a lot, but it's always interesting. They're always doing something interesting, right? And the Polari, by contrast, they have an interesting culture, but they
don't really do anything interesting.
They don't have a lot of interesting conflict going on because they're all very cohesive, you know.
Yeah.
And the Brubus are completely individualistic to the point where like every single Brubus has an infinite number of conflicts going on at any one time.
Right.
And there's always some shit to talk about.
They're more like humans.
They're a lot like humans. And then my favorite character, I'd still probably have to lean toward Grandmammy just because like the scene where, and this was great because I wasn't involved in the story writing. And so I got to see all this stuff, you know, for the first time, fresh, without without knowing what was going to happen. And the first time Grandmammy calls on her old war buddies, and it's just a fucking huge explosion, and then all these quadruped are around, and like apparently was some kind of big deal in like a historical war thing, and it's just like, oh shit, like
it's a little unexpected.
yeah. So Grandmammy goes from being this sort of sad and lonely grandmotherly character just living out in the wilderness by herself to sort of like, you know, leading this war effort and just being a total fucking badass, and it's very subversive, which is awesome. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Although, but there's also Remerle. I like Remerle too.
Oh yeah.
She's sort of a very one-off kind of a character, but I just like that whole sequence is
The scene of
fabulous.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it if people haven't played Crash Lands yet, but it's good stuff.
All right, we'll wrap up the questions there and the podcast for today. If you have any questions for next week, you can get them in at podcast.bscotch.net or check out just all the rest of our stuff at butterscotch-shenanigans.com. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.